Hello. So I wanted to make a new video, and I wanted the topic of it to be fear. But first, I slept in the Walmart parking lot last night, and it was good, nice and quiet. It was Halloween yesterday, so it wasn't too rowdy, and it was pretty quiet where I was. Woke up this morning, went to McDonald's, had my coffee, and charged up. And I've been running my new tool to find liquidity pools, and it worked. Yesterday was kind of the first day that I was actually able to really spend some time and sort through the data it's given me. But I tried some pools, ended up being positive this morning, so that's nice. I'll show you how I track that. I just realized I can flip my phone around. So this is kind of my tracking program that I use. And yeah, so basically this number here is kind of right there is kind of what I'm looking at. My total for today was up 2% less over the last 24 hours, so I'm up 7% overall this month, or since I started tracking this, since I built this kind of tracker thing. So that's nice, that's cool. But I'm hoping to maybe get that up a bit while I figure out this tool and kind of track down better pools, and then I'll have a whole bunch of things in here where I'm tracking different wallets and what's doing good and what's not doing good. But yeah, so that was a nice little surprise this morning. Now I want to talk about fear, and one thing I am going to talk about though is when I go into a pool, I have to decide what range I'm going to make the position. And whenever you're looking at a problem, a lot of times the solution fits a bell curve. So this is a graph comparing two factors, y and x. So let's say in my case of a pool, y is the profitability, and x is the range that I can choose. I can go very small and I can go very high. If I go very small, I get a lot of fees, but the price movements really knock me out, so my profit is lower. And if I go really high, it really cuts down on the fees, so I'm not rebalancing as much, but I'm still not making very many fees, so that cuts down my profitability. So usually when you have a problem, the solution is in the middle of two extremes. Now it's possible that, say, that the line of probability is right up here, and that means in this case you're never profitable. You can limit your losses by finding that perfect sweet spot between the two extremes, but you're still not going to be profitable. So ideally, you hope that you find a pool where that you find that sweet spot and it's kind of goes above the profitability line so that you're actually profitable. And there's very few pools like that I found. So anyways, why I'm mentioning this is I want to talk about fear. And if you were to ask the question, how afraid should I be, or how afraid should a person be? The answer is going to be in the middle of two extremes. So those two extremes is, one is being carefree, ignoring all consequences, and just doing whatever you want, whenever you want, and not worrying about anything. So that's one extreme. The other extreme is being paralyzed by fear to the point where you're terrified of everything, and it limits you and it paralyzes you, and you just don't really, it kind of controls your life, where you're not doing a lot of things that you want to do just basically because fear is there. So I want to kind of look at that. And I think that's it for showing what's going on with the laptop. And yeah, cool. Okay, so I really like Christopher Nolan movies, and he usually puts a lot of really interesting ideas in the movies. You can watch them and kind of over and over and see a lot of cool new things. I don't know exactly what his opinions are and a lot of the ideas he puts in, and I don't know if he even has a final opinion when he's putting stuff in his movies. Like, he's got messages and ideas and stuff he puts in there, but it's possible he's not presenting like a conclusion, like, okay, this is what I think about this situation. It's just he's putting in ideas that are there to think about, you know. Maybe they're evil, bad conclusions in his movies, but I don't know. I just look at the movies and the ideas, and it's like, oh, that's pretty cool. So a good movie is Batman Begins, and that whole movie is about fear. It's awesome. It's looking at how fear affects society, how fear affects people's behavior. In that movie, it was about crime, how criminals were able to use fear to stay protected because people were afraid of ratting on them and stuff like that. But then, of course, Batman wants to use fear against the criminals, so then he tries to be scary by dressing up like a bat, which is, you know, fun comic booky idea. But yeah, so it's kind of like looking at, well, how can fear work against people? How can fear work for people? And then there's just a ton of stuff in there about all these kind of different aspects of fear. It's pretty cool. Another thing that's kind of covered in the movie is the will to act. You know, with I can't remember, the League of Shadows training them, and he's talking about, you know, you have to overcome your fear, and then, you know, you have to have that will to act. And that will to act can be kind of limited by your fears and stuff like that. So yeah, it's pretty neat. So if you're interested in a good movie on fear, and it's kind of interesting when you start paying attention to the kind of themes in that movie, it kind of makes more sense, and it's cool. So looking at the extremes on the question of how afraid should a person be. So let's look at the first extreme as being carefree, not worrying about anything. Now that I don't think is good, because there are consequences to actions. There are dangers that are worth being aware of and being prepared to deal with, and dealing with kind of, you know, the risks you take. So I have this idea. I wanted to write a little thing called Reality Has Edges. So the reality of the world around us, there are hidden edges, and a lot of people don't bump into a lot of those edges, but they will bump into some of them, and those edges hurt. They're like, it's like we're in an invisible maze, and we're trying to get out of this invisible maze, and you keep bumping into walls and stuff like that. So there are consequences to actions. And there's a lot of people who live like there are no consequences and do whatever, and then eventually that catches up to them. And to me, that's kind of like the day of the Lord. It's that day of consequence where your actions finally catch up to you, where you've played games with this reality that God created, and now you know, those consequences are catching up to you. So yeah, so I think it's good to be carefree to a certain extent, but not ignorant of the reality of dangers. So, okay, now the other extreme would be being paralyzed by fear. You're aware that these dangers exist, little things could happen, and those consequences of those actions can have lifelong effects that, you know, you end up in a wheelchair, you know, and paralyzed or brain damaged or whatever. There's a lot of little things that can happen that are really horrible, and you're aware of that. So now maybe that paralyzes you and you can't do nothing. And kind of a big example of that too is anxiety, social anxiety. You're afraid to go out, you're afraid to talk to people, and there's all these horrible things that could happen. You know, somebody, you know, tears the strip out of you, you know, verbally, and you know, these horrible, scary things that can happen, and so you just kind of stop going out and stop doing things that you care about. I'm a big, I love nature. I love going on hikes, and there's a lot of dangers out there. So when I go with my nephews, we do a prayer. It's like, Lord, save us from bears and cougars and landslides and bees and wasps and all the list goes on and on. There's all these things that you know, we've kind of encountered out there that are dangerous, but at the same time, you don't want to not enjoy nature. You don't want to be paralyzed by these fears. These things could happen, so you know, it's good to take precautions. I think you shouldn't ignore them. You should be aware. You know, if you see a bear, don't try to go pet it. You know, you see a lot of these videos of bears coming out to golf courses and stuff, and people like trying to get close, take a picture, and I've seen people like putting or videos of people putting like their kids kind of close to these bears, trying to get a picture of the kids, and it's like, no, don't do that. That's extreme ignorance. You see a bear, you know, you get away. You don't play around with that. They can be very dangerous. For the most part, they're not, but there are things that can happen. So I enjoy nature, and I think if you do have fear, if you do have anxiety, you don't want to let that control you. You do want to look at that as kind of an obstacle that you want to overcome in life. That's something you want to kind of, okay, how can I kind of push the limits and kind of get over this fear and start small and maybe do some public speaking, whatnot. One thing that really helped me was working in like I worked at a gas station, so then all of a sudden I had to talk to lots of people. And I worked in hotels for a while, and that really helped me deal with people a lot better, because I used to be really afraid of talking to people and stuff like that. Yeah, so you want to find that middle balance between two extremes. And oh, I forgot to load one thing. Let's see if I can find it really quick. But this is let's say Canada deaths per year. So I think you should be aware, how are people dying every year? So 2023 deaths by month, Canada death rate, deaths by metropolitan area. I wonder what I googled last time. Yeah, I'm not looking for the #1 cause of death in Canada. Diseases of the heart, accidents. Yeah, that's it. Oh, there's the chart. Okay, so basically people die every day in Canada. In general, since we only live to 100 years at most, you can assume that about 1% of the population is going to die every year. And that's kind of a rough estimate. But it's kind of good, like, well, how? What's happening there? And these are things that and take seriously, because this is actually happening. So like #1 is cancer, and then you get heart disease. So this is in 2023, so 84,000, that's about I think about 200 a day. Heart attacks is about 150 a day. Accidents, that's probably going to include a lot of car accidents. Some of these I don't know what they are. Respiratory diseases, and then COVID's in there. But a lot lower than like cancer and stuff like that. Yeah, so these are things to be aware of, to worry about. And you know, if you can kind of, like, chronic liver disease in there, you know, if you're drinking and you're drinking too much, and you're terrified of bees or something, then maybe rearrange your things that you worry about. Okay, so now here's another thing. This is a risk matrix, and this is something I did safety for a little while, junior safety advisor, and it's like, you look at these possible accidents that could happen to you, and first of all, you want to say, well, how severe is it if it does happen to you? Do you get a scratch? Do you get broken bone? Do you die? And then the most severe would be a lot of people dying. But then you also want to look at, well, how likely is the event, right? Like if a mega volcano explodes underneath you, well, how likely is that actually to happen? Yeah, if it happens, it's horrible, but it's extremely unlikely, so I'm not going to worry about it. On the other hand, the most dangerous things, the things you do want to worry about is something that is severe or significant, but also likely. That's when it's worth occupying your time and your thinking, because that's something that's going to be bad if it happens, and it's likely to happen. So there's things that, you know, people worry about that you really shouldn't worry about it. It's extremely unlikely. And then there's things that are worth worrying about that sometimes people don't worry about. So I like statistics. I believe God created this world, and statistics is a good way to understand the world that he created, and I don't think it's something that he wants people to ignore. But yeah, so this is a good way of thinking about risks. And what should we really be worried about? Okay, I think that's it. I showed the top things there. Yeah, so risk matrices are pretty, even the concept is good. I mean, you don't always have to memorize all the stats and all that, but Yeah, okay. Now it's around again. And I'm back, and the sun's, it was just raining like really hard like a couple hours ago, and now it's sunny. Okay, so, yeah, so, okay, so I'm a born again Christian. I believe in Jesus. And in the Bible, Jesus was being tempted by the devil, and he was on a roof of a building, and Satan told him, he said, you should jump off this roof and God will protect you, because it says in the Bible that God will protect you, so you know you don't get hurt. And Jesus said, no, that's not right, and don't tempt me, or I can't remember what he said, but oh yeah, he said don't tempt God. So there's this law of gravity. If you fall from a certain height, you're probably going to get hurt, and that's something God built into this world. Gravity exists, it can be measured, and people should respect that law. It's not something that should be ignored. You don't want to tempt God by ignoring the dangers that exist in the world. So you can kind of put yourselves in a position where you say, hey, protect me, God. I'm going to do what I want to do, and I'm going to take these risks, and you know, you have to save me if something bad happens. It's like, well, no, God wants you to respect his creation, respect the math of it, and understand it, and live accordingly. So yeah, I think that kind of shows that God wants you to kind of be careful. Don't jump off buildings for no reason, and then expect God to send angels to catch you when you're going to hit the ground. Now another thing to look at in the Bible was when Peter was in the boat and Jesus told him to get out of the boat and walk on the water. So in that case, God was telling him to, you know, to ignore the laws of nature, that you're going to sink in the water and drown in the storm, and to trust God. So I think, you know, God does communicate, and I mean, you really, really, really want to be sure that it's God and not your own brain, which I think happens a lot with people thinking that something's God, but it's just your own brain. But if God, you know, wants you to do something, God tells you to do something, it's good to be brave, to face the dangers, and to obey God, and to sometimes do dangerous things, and trust that God will take care of you. So I guess really what comes down to there would be if God really was calling a person to do something against kind of the laws of nature. So something to be aware of. Now, when I was a kid, I had a ton of fears. I was afraid of people. I was afraid of cars. We lived on a farm. My mom would send me outside to play, and I was just terrified of the cars on the highway, and I would hide from them. I don't know, I just had all these fears. And some nights I would just have these horrible nightmares all night long, and the whole night would just be a long series of these horrible scary nightmares, and I could just feel this kind of dark evil. And then I became a born again Christian when I was probably about 20. I really kind of found God on my own and accepted Jesus. And then you know, I still had all these problems, but I used to have these night terrors too, and I'd just wake up in an instant, just this horrible, terrible terror would just attack you, and you'd just wake up in the middle of the night like, ah. So it happened after I became a born again Christian. I rebuked it in the name of Jesus, and then I prayed and I praised God, and it went away. And then it went away for like good. I don't remember it happening since then. And I used to always have this kind of dark terror feeling of like nighttime, this dark outside, and that kind of went away too. And I think you can have this spirit of just being terrified of you don't know what something's out there, and it's not even a logical thing to be afraid of. It's just you feel this fear, and I think that can be a spiritual thing that, you know, you can pray and kind of get help with by walking with God. And it might be a spiritual attack. So I think, yeah, it's good to be afraid of logical things that are actually dangerous, and it's good to overcome your fears of things that aren't worth being afraid of. Yeah, so I can go for walks at night now, and I'm not afraid of the dark. I'm not afraid of a lot of things, and yeah, I think that's a good thing to overcome. Now, I think I've said everything I want to say. Batman Begins is an awesome movie. I really like it. And oh yeah, another thing too is I take risks. But as long as they're calculated risk, so when I do trading, every pool that I go into is a risk. There's a chance that it could go to zero. There's probabilities involved, but risk is different than gambling. Gambling is you're not calculating the probabilities involved, and odds are against you, and your chances are you're going to lose. So if you go gamble at a casino, the odds are against you. Mathematically, if you gamble long enough in a casino, you're guaranteed to lose. There's a slight chance at the beginning that you could get positive because of fluctuations, but over the long term, if you repeat an action long enough, the probability of kind of moving away from that profitability or whatever, I don't know, I can't explain very well, but the chances are like you're almost guaranteed after a while to lose if you do it long enough. So the more you gamble, the more you're going to kind of approach that final balance that they've set, where maybe you have a 45% chance of winning. So eventually you're going to get there. And yeah, so I take risks. I take risks when I go hiking, but I'm aware of those risks, and I carry bear spray. I take risks, when you're walking on rocks, and you'd be like aware, okay, like what happens if I fall that way? I'm gonna chip a bone if I land on these sharp rocks. And there's a teacher that I was driving to school in the town I used to live in, and he fell off his bike, and there was just like a little 3-foot drop off to the right of him, and he bumped his head and got brain damage and was a vegetable. I mean, if you're aware of the risks. I saw a video too, or I heard somebody talking about, you wear a helmet so that, not so that, because you're afraid or terrified, because it'll let you push the limits a bit more. Now, you can do stuff that normally you wouldn't want to do because you have this helmet, and that's covering a major problem area with accidents. Yeah, I even seen a guy like talking about in hurricanes. He's like, if you're in a tornado, and there's a tornado coming for you and hiding in the basement, put on a bike helmet. It's not a bad idea. So you want to be aware of what could happen, what's likely, what's unlikely, and adapt, and then enjoy life, and don't be afraid of things. There's a lot of fun to be had if you're not terrified and paralyzed by everything. Yeah, and it can free you up to have a better life, do things that you enjoy, and do it smartly, so you're not putting yourself in danger or other people in danger. And yeah, okay, that's it. Goodbye.